$3,270. She called it my reparations for them adopting me. I'm Jess. For 26 years, I tried to be the perfect daughter, but on my parents' 40th anniversary, I finally realized I wasn't family to them. I was just an ATM. If you think family is about love and not just DNA, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Let's get into the story. The glue on page 14 was still tacky. I could feel it sticking to the pad of my thumb as I pressed the photo down, a faded snapshot of my 5th birthday. In the picture, I was smiling, a gap-toothed grin, wearing a party hat that was slightly too big. My dad, Mark, was looking at the camera, but his body was turned slightly away toward my sister, Tiffany. I shook the thought off. Stop it, Jess, I told myself. Tonight is about them. I sat in the front seat of my 2014 Honda Civic, the heater rattling as it tried to fight off the biting Chicago wind. Outside, the valet stand for the Gilded Fork was already bustling. Bentleys and G-Wagons idled in the line, their exhaust pluming white in the freezing air. I looked down at my dress. It was a navy blue wrap dress I'd found on clearance at TJ Maxx. It looked nice enough in my bathroom mirror, but here, under the amber glow of the restaurant's awning, it felt thin, cheap. I took a deep breath and looked at the scrapbook on the passenger seat. It had taken me 3 weeks to make. I'd raided the boxes in the attic, scanned old film, and printed everything on high-gloss paper. It was a chronicle of the last 40 years, Mark and Susan's ruby anniversary. I wanted to show them that I paid attention, that I cherished our history, even if my entry point into that history came a little later than Tiffany's. I checked my phone. 6:40 p.m. I was 20 minutes early. I always was. Being early meant I could control the variables. I could make sure the table was ready, check that the wine lift had the Cabernet Dad liked, and ensure the lighting wasn't too dim for Mom to read the menu. I grabbed the heavy book, locked my car, parking 3 blocks away to save on the $40 valet fee, and walked toward the entrance. The Gilded Fork smelled like money. That was the only way to describe it. A mix of aged mahogany, truffle oil, and expensive cologne. The host stand was a fortress of dark wood, manned by a guy with cheekbones sharp enough to cut glass. "Reservation for the Miller party," I said, trying to project a confidence I didn't feel. It's their 40th anniversary. The host looked me up and down. His eyes lingered for a fraction of a second on my scuffed boots before moving to his iPad. "Ah, yes, the VIP booth, center floor." "Perfect," I said, clutching the scrapbook against my chest like a shield. "I'm the daughter. I just wanted to make sure everything is set before they arrive." He led me through the dining room. It was a cavernous space, dimly lit by chandeliers that looked like weeping willows made of crystal. The VIP booth was exactly that, a massive, semicircular leather banquette elevated on a small platform. It was a stage. It was designed for people who wanted to be seen. I slid into the booth, the leather cool against my legs. I placed the scrapbook in the center of the table, squaring it perfectly with the salt and pepper shakers. I ran my hand over the cover. The Miller family, 40 years of love. I desperately wanted tonight to go well. Tiffany had been relentlessly lately, making dig after dig about my job as a vet tech, cleaning up dog vomit, she called it, and my parents had just laughed along. But tonight was different. Tonight, I had a contribution. I had a gift that proved I was part of the fabric of this family. My phone buzzed. A text from Tiffany. "We're pulling up. Don't look weird." My stomach tightened. I straightened my silverware, took a sip of water, and pasted a smile on my face. I saw them before I heard them. The heavy oak doors swung open, and my family swept in like a weather front. Tiffany was leading the charge, phone already held high, the blinding white ring light clipped to the top of it, illuminating her face like an angelic halo. She was wearing something silver and backless that probably cost more than my entire car. Behind her trailed my parents. Mom was in a cream-colored gown that she kept tugging at, nervously checking her reflection in the passing windows. Dad walked with that stiff, chest-out stride of a man who knows he's paying the bill. I stood up, smoothing my dress, my heart doing a little nervous flutter. I picked up the scrapbook. Here we go, I thought. Showtime. "Happy anniversary!" I beamed as they reached the platform. I moved to hug Mom, but Tiffany stepped smoothly in front of her, effectively blocking my path. She didn't hug me. She didn't even look me in the eye. She was looking at the screen of her phone, framing the shot of the table. "Okay, the lighting here is actually decent," she muttered to herself. Then she lowered the phone and finally acknowledged my existence. Her eyes flicked down to my boots, then up to my face. It was a look of mild disappointment, like she'd ordered sparkling water and been served tap. "Hey, Jess," she said, her voice flat. She turned immediately to the host, who had followed them over. "Excuse me. Hi. Yeah, slight change of plans." I froze. What change? Tiffany snapped her gum. "We need this booth to be a little less crowded. Could you actually set a single cover at the bar for her?" She pointed a manicured finger at me. The host blinked, looking between us. I'm sorry?" "The bar," Tiffany repeated, slower this time, as if speaking to a toddler. "My sister here, she needs to sit at the bar." "Tiffany, what are you doing?" I asked, my grip tightening on the scrapbook. "There's plenty of room. This booth seats 6. Tiffany sighed, a long, dramatic exhale that made her shoulders drop. She turned to me, putting a hand on my shoulder. It wasn't affectionate, it was patronizing. "Look, Jess, don't take this personally," she said, her voice dropping to a stage whisper. "But this is the 40th anniversary. It's a milestone. I'm doing a legacy reel for my channel. We're going for a specific aesthetic tonight. Core 4, you know?" "Core 4?" I repeated. "The bloodline," she said, smiling as if that explained everything. "It's a genetic thing. It just looks better for the brand if the table is uniform." I felt the blood drain from my face. It was a punch to the gut, breathless and sharp. I looked past her shoulder to my parents. "Mom, Dad?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. "Are you serious?" Mom wouldn't look at me. She was busy adjusting Dad's tie, her fingers trembling slightly. "Oh, honey," she whispered, looking at the floor. "You know how Tiffany gets about her social media. It's her career." "It's dinner," I argued, panic rising in my throat. "It's your anniversary dinner. I made this whole book." I held up the scrapbook slightly. Dad cleared his throat. He checked his Rolex, tapping the crystal face impatiently. "Jess, don't start drama," he grumbled. "We're already 10 minutes behind schedule. Just sit at the bar. It's right over there. We can still wave to you." "Wave to me?" I stared at him. "I'm your daughter." "It's just for an hour, Jess," Tiffany cut in, turning her back on me to slide into the booth. She patted the leather seat next to her. "Come on, Daddy, sit here. The lighting hits your good side." The host was still standing there, looking mortified. "Miss?" he asked me softly. I looked at the three of them. They were already settling in, unfolding napkins, checking menus. They had formed a circle, a closed loop of biological perfection. I was the error code. I felt a stinging heat behind my eyes, but I refused to let it spill over. Not here, not in front of Tiffany's camera. "Fine," I choked out. I stepped off the platform. My heels felt heavy, clunky. I walked past the other tables, couples holding hands, families toasting glasses, and made my way to the marble bar on the far side of the room. It felt like a walk of shame. I climbed onto a high stool, my back to the dining room. I placed the scrapbook on the bar top. The cover, the Miller family, stared up at me. It felt like a cruel joke. "Rough night?" the bartender asked. He was an older guy with kind eyes and sleeves rolled up to his elbows. "You have no idea," I whispered. The distance between the bar and the VIP booth was only about 30 feet, but it might as well have been an ocean. From my perch on the stool, I had a direct line of sight to table 1. I swiveled slightly, nursing the glass of ice water the bartender had slid over to me. I felt like a spy in a noir film, watching a transaction go down that I wasn't supposed to see. "You want a menu?" the bartender asked. His name tag read Leo. He was wiping down the counter with a rhythmic circular motion, but his eyes kept darting to my family's table. Even the staff sensed the weirdness. "Just the soup, please," I said quietly. "Tomato, basil, and actually, that's it." I had checked my bank account while walking over. $3,412.50. It was everything I had. Every penny I'd scraped together from overtime shifts at the clinic, cleaning kennels, and assisting with 3 a.m. emergency surgeries. I was saving for a used Subaru so I could stop praying my Honda would start every morning. I wasn't about to blow $60 on a steak I was eating alone. "Coming right up," Leo said gently. I turned back to the show. It was starting. The sommelier, a tall man in a pristine tuxedo, arrived at their table cradling a bottle of wine like it was a newborn baby. I recognized the label from the distance, a Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa that I knew for a fact retailed for over $400. I watched Dad swirl the dark red liquid in his glass, sniff it, and nod with exaggerated approval. Tiffany didn't drink hers. She held the glass up to the light, took a photo, and then set it back down. Then came the spectacle. 2 waiters marched toward the booth carrying a silver platter that was so large it required its own stand. The Seafood Tower Royale. It was obscene. Dry ice fog tumbled off the sides, cascading onto the table like a mystical waterfall. Tiers of lobster tails, king crab legs the size of baseball bats, and dozens of oysters glistened under the chandelier light. I saw Tiffany clap her hands, not in hunger, but in delight at the content. She immediately stood up, directing Mom and Dad on how to pose. "Lean in." I could almost hear her bark. "Dad, hold a crab leg." "Mom, look like you're laughing." They obeyed. My father, a man who usually hated having his picture taken, held up a lobster claw and forced a stiff, unnatural grin. Mom tilted her head, trying to find her light. They looked like hostages in expensive clothes. Leo set a bowl of soup in front of me. It was small, garnished with a single basil leaf. "On the house," he muttered. "Bread, too." "Thank you," I said, my throat tight. The kindness of a stranger stung more than the cruelty of my sister. I dipped my spoon into the soup, watching them feast. I saw them cracking shells, dipping meat into melted butter, tossing their heads back in laughter. They were performing the perfect family, and the most essential part of that performance was my absence. I was the flaw they had cropped out of the frame. I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram. Tiffany was already live. I tapped on her profile picture. The video feed lagged for a second, then loaded. There she was, holding a glass of champagne, the seafood tower looming behind her. "Happy anniversary to the people who made me," she chirped into the camera, her voice tinny through my phone speakers. 40 years of love, success, and building a legacy. Family is everything, you guys. Keep your circle tight and your standards high. #blessed, #Miller Dynasty. Family is everything. I looked up from the screen to the real Tiffany, who was currently ignoring Mom to type a caption. I looked at my soup. I looked at the scrapbook sitting next to my elbow, filled with photos of me and Dad fishing, of Mom teaching me to bake, of the day they signed my adoption papers. I pushed the soup bowl away. I wasn't hungry anymore. The waiter, a man who looked like he'd seen everything and was impressed by nothing, dropped the check. It landed on the white tablecloth with a heavy, final thud. It was bound in black leather, gold embossed with the restaurant's logo. It sat there like a landmine. From my stool, I watched the energy at the table shift instantly. The laughter died. The posing stopped. The happy anniversary facade cracked the moment reality came calling. Tiffany reached for it first. Of course she did. She liked to play the matriarch, the one in control. She flipped it open, and even from 30 feet away, I saw her posture stiffen. Her head snapped back slightly, eyes widening. She didn't reach for her credit card. Instead, she leaned in, whispering furiously to Mom and Dad. I saw Dad rub his temples. I saw Mom take a large gulp of wine, draining her glass. They were huddled together, a three-headed monster of indecision. Then, slowly, 3 pairs of eyes turned toward the bar. They looked at me. Tiffany raised her hand. She didn't wave, she beckoned. It was the gesture you'd use to call a dog that had gotten off its leash. "Come here." My heart hammered against my ribs. A foolish, childish part of me sparked with hope. Maybe they want to apologize, I thought. Maybe they realize how awful this looks. Maybe there's a slice of cake waiting for me. I slid off the stool. "Be right back," I told Leo. "Good luck," he muttered, wiping a glass. The walk to the table felt like marching to a sentencing hearing. As I got closer, the smell hit me. The rich, cloying scent of garlic butter, truffle oil, and stale wine. The table was a graveyard of gluttony. empty shells, half-eaten steaks, discarded napkins. When I arrived, nobody stood up to offer me a chair. I stood at the edge of the platform, looking down at them. "Did you guys enjoy the food?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Tiffany smiled. It was a terrifying smile, tight, wide, and completely devoid of warmth. It was the smile of a shark that had just found blood in the water. "It was exquisite, Jess," she purred, "truly a celebration." She tapped her long fingernails on the black leather book. Tap, tap, tap. "We were just talking about you," she continued, her voice dripping with faux sweetness, "about how lucky you are." "Lucky?" I asked. "To be here," she said, gesturing vaguely to the room, to the parents, to the life they lived. "I mean, think about the odds, Jess. Mom and Dad plucked you out of the system. They gave you a home, braces, college tuition. They basically saved your life." I looked at Mom. She was studying the pattern on the tablecloth intently. "Mom?" I asked. She didn't look up. "The thing is," Tiffany pressed on, leaning forward, her elbows on the table, "raising a child is an investment, especially one that wasn't planned. And we're a little liquid poor right now after the kitchen remodel. We figured it's time for a return on that investment." My brain couldn't process the words. "What are you saying?" Tiffany slid the black leather folder across the table. It stopped right at the edge, inches from my hip. "We think you should get this," she said casually, as if asking me to pass the salt. "Consider it a thank you. Call it reparations for being a burden all these years." I stared at the book. The air in the restaurant seemed to vanish. I couldn't breathe. "You want me to pay for your anniversary dinner?" I whispered. "The dinner I wasn't allowed to eat? The dinner I wasn't allowed to sit at?" "Don't be dramatic," Dad grunted, finally looking at me. His eyes were hard, defensive. "We've paid for plenty of your meals, Jessica. It's one check." "Open it," Tiffany commanded. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the leather. I flipped the cover open. My eyes scanned past the list of items, the $200 wagyu, the $40 sides, the $500 wine, and landed on the bold number at the bottom. Total, $3,270.42. I stared at the number. It wasn't just a number. It was my used car. It was 6 months of rent. It was hundreds of hours of cleaning dog cages and holding the paws of dying animals. I looked up at Tiffany. She was smirking, waiting for me to pull out my card and be the good, obedient little charity case I had always been. Something inside my chest, something that had been pulled tight for 26 years, finally snapped. Silence has a sound. It's a high-pitched ringing, like a dog whistle, that screams in your ears when your world is shifting on its axis. I stood there, looking down at the receipt. The paper was thin, flimsy, yet it held the weight of an anvil. $3,270. My mind flashed to my savings account. I saw the rusted bumper of the Subaru I wanted to buy. I saw the weeks of eating instant ramen so I could afford the supplies for the scrapbook. I saw myself at 10 years old trying to scrub the floor perfectly so Mom would smile at me the way she smiled at Tiffany. I looked up at Mark, my father, the man who had walked me down the aisle at my high school graduation, only to leave early because Tiffany had a migraine. "Dad, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. You agree with this? You think I owe you this? He shifted in the leather booth, the expensive wine flushing his cheeks. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He picked up a piece of bread, tearing it apart nervously. It's been a hard year, Jess. The market's down, and Tiffany says you've been picking up extra shifts. You're single. You have fewer expenses. I pay rent, I said, my voice shaking. I have loans. I make $18 an hour. Oh, stop the poverty play, Tiffany snapped, reapplying her lip gloss. It's pathetic. You're an investment that didn't pay off, Jess. You're the diverse portfolio that crashed. The least you can do is cover dinner. Investment. The word hung in the air, cold and sterile. I looked at Mom. Mom? She finally looked up. Her eyes were glassy, swimming with wine and denial. Just pay it, honey, she slurred slightly. Please, don't ruin the night. Don't be selfish. Selfish. That was the word that did it. That was the spark that lit the fuse. All my life, I had been the opposite of selfish. I was the one who stayed home to nurse the dog when they went to Cabo. I was the one who drove them to the airport at 4 a.m. I was the one who remembered birthdays, anniversaries, and half-birthdays. I had spent my entire existence trying to buy my way into their hearts with currency of service and love. And now they were presenting me with a literal bill. I looked at the scrapbook sitting on the table. The Miller family, 40 years of love. I reached out and touched the cover. It felt cold. It was a lie, a beautifully bound, glossy lie. There was no love here. There was only a transaction. I wasn't a daughter. I was a subscription service they wanted to cancel but still charge a fee to. A strange calm washed over me. The shaking in my hands stopped. The heat behind my eyes evaporated, replaced by a clarity as sharp as the steak knives they had used to gorge themselves. They wanted a transaction? Fine, I would give them one. I closed the black leather folder. I didn't slam it. I closed it gently, with the reverence of a priest closing a Bible. You're right, I said. My voice was different now, deeper, steady. Tiffany smirked, thinking she had won. Finally, I knew you'd see reason. I do see reason, I said. I see it perfectly clearly now. I reached into my purse. Tiffany's eyes tracked my hand, expecting the glint of a Visa card. Instead, I pulled out my wallet and fished out a single, crumpled $10 bill. I smoothed the bill out against the edge of the table. It was crinkled, worn, soft at the corners, a stark contrast to the crisp, starched white tablecloth. I placed Alexander Hamilton face up on top of the $3,270 receipt. There, I said, my voice steady. That covers the tomato soup, and I threw in a generous 30% tip for Leo at the bar. The table went dead silent. Tiffany stared at the $10 bill as if it were a dead insect I had just dropped on her plate. She blinked once, twice, her brain struggling to compute the defiance. "Is this a joke?" she hissed, her voice dropping an octave. "Jess, stop playing games. Put your card down. The waiter is watching." "I know he is," I said, leaning back. I crossed my arms, feeling a strange, intoxicating power surging through my veins. And no, it's not a joke. It's math. Math? Dad sputtered, wiping grease from his chin. What are you talking about? The rules, I said, looking him dead in the eye. Tiffany set the rules at the door, remember? She said this table was for the core four, for the bloodline. She was very specific about the aesthetic. I gestured to the empty platters of lobster and the dregs of the wine. I respected your rules, I continued, speaking clearly enough that the couple at the next table stopped chewing to listen. I sat at the bar. I drank my water. I stayed out of your legacy photos. And since I wasn't family enough to sit in the booth, I am certainly not family enough to subsidize the feast I wasn't allowed to touch. Tiffany's face went from pale to a splotchy, furious red. The veins in her neck strained against her skin. "You ungrateful little brat," she spat, abandoning her fake influencer whisper for a screech. "After everything we did for you, you're going to leave us with this bill? I can't put this on my card. I'm maxed out." "Sounds like a liquidity problem," I said, echoing her words from earlier. "Mom," Tiffany shrieked, turning to Susan, "do something. Make her pay." Mom looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Jess, please, just help us out. We're a little tight right now." For a second, the old Jess wanted to cave. The Jess who wanted to be loved. But then I looked at the scrapbook again. I looked at how easily they had banished me, and how quickly they had summoned me back only when they needed a wallet. "No," I said. I raised my hand high in the air. "Excuse me, waiter." The waiter, the one with the tired eyes, materialized almost instantly. He must have been hovering, sensing the tension. "Yes, miss." "Hi," I said, flashing him a bright, genuine smile. "There seems to be a confusion with the bill. You see, I was dining separately, at the bar." I pointed to the booth. "These three are together. I am not with them. I've paid my tab with Leo. These people," I gestured to my family, "will be handling this check on their own." The waiter looked at the receipt, then at the terrified faces of my parents and sister. He looked back at me. I saw a flicker of understanding, maybe even respect in his eyes. "Understood, miss," he said, taking the check back. He turned to Dad. "Sir, how would you like to settle the $3,270? Dad turned the color of ash. Tiffany looked like she was going to be sick. I didn't wait to see the credit cards come out. I didn't wait to see them scramble. I stood up. The sound of my chair scraping against the hardwood floor was like a gunshot in the hushed dining room. "Where are you going?" Tiffany shrieked. Her composure had completely disintegrated. The cool girl mask was gone, replaced by the panicked face of a woman realizing her credit limit was about to be tested. "Sit down! You can't just walk away." "I can," I said, slinging my purse over my shoulder. "I really, really can." "You selfish, jealous little..." Tiffany lunged forward, grabbing the edge of the table. A half-empty wine glass wobbled and tipped over, sending a dark red stain spreading across the pristine white cloth like an open wound. Dad was fumbling for his wallet, his hands shaking so badly he dropped a credit card onto the floor. He looked small. For my whole life, I had seen Mark Miller as a titan, the head of the household, the decision maker. Now, scrambling under the table for his visa while people stared, he looked pathetic. "Jess," Mom whimpered, her eyes filling with actual tears now, not the performative ones she saved for holidays. "Please, everyone is looking." "Let them look," I said calmly. "Maybe they'll follow Tiffany. It's great content." I reached down to the table. For a second, Tiffany flinched, thinking I was going to grab the check, but I didn't. I picked up the scrapbook. I held it in my hands one last time. It was heavy. It contained receipts from family vacations I had paid for, photos of me graduating alone, and handwritten notes that said "I love you" to people who only loved what I could do for them. "I made this for you," I said, my voice cutting through the tension. Tiffany sneered. "Nobody wants your arts and crafts project, Jess." "I know," I said softly. "I finally know." I turned my back on them. I walked away from the VIP booth, past the gawking diners who were whispering behind their hands. I could feel Tiffany's glare burning into my spine, but it didn't hurt anymore. It felt like standing near a fire that had gone out, just ash and cold air. I reached the host's stand near the entrance. There was a large decorative brass wastebasket sitting next to a potted fern. I stopped. I looked at the cover of the book, The Miller Family. With a steady hand, I held it over the opening. "Miss?" the host asked, stepping forward, alarmed. I didn't answer. I just let go. The heavy book fell with a loud, hollow thud into the bottom of the metal bin. It landed face down among the used napkins and discarded menus. I turned back to the dining room one last time. I caught Tiffany's eye across the restaurant. She was frozen, her mouth open, watching her legacy sit in the trash. "Happy anniversary," I called out, loud enough for the back row to hear. "I hope the Instagram likes are worth the overdraft fees." I pushed through the heavy oak doors and stepped out into the night. The Chicago wind hit me the moment the heavy doors swung shut behind me, but for the first time all night, I didn't feel cold. I felt electric. I walked past the valet stand, past the line of shimmering Bentleys, and turned the corner toward the dark street where my beat-up Civic was parked. My heels clicked against the pavement, a steady, rhythmic beat that sounded like a countdown ending. Click, click, click. Gone. My phone started vibrating in my purse. It wasn't a text, it was a call. Long, angry buzzes that rattled against my hip. I pulled it out. The screen lit up with a photo I had taken 2 Christmases ago, Mom and Dad. I stared at the screen. A few hours ago, seeing that name would have made me answer on the first ring, desperate to know what they needed, desperate to fix whatever I had broken. But now, I just watched the name flash. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The call went to voicemail. Immediately, another call came through. Tiffany. I didn't answer. I stopped under a street lamp, the yellow light casting a long shadow on the sidewalk. I unlocked my phone and went to my contacts. I tapped on Tiffany. I scrolled to the bottom. My thumb hovered over the red text, block caller. I didn't hesitate. I tapped it. I went to Mom and Dad. Block caller. I went to the group chat Miller Family Events. Leave conversation. The phone went silent. The angry buzzing stopped. The frantic notifications vanished. It was just a piece of glass and metal again. I got into my car. The engine groaned before turning over, and the heater blasted cold air for the first minute, but I didn't care. I sat there in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel, and let out a laugh. It started as a small chuckle, then bubbled up into a loud, full-cheated laugh that bounced off the dashboard. I wasn't crazy. I was free. I put the car in gear and drove. I didn't go home. I drove 3 miles down the road to a brightly lit drive-thru with a spinning burger sign. "Welcome to Burger Barn. What can I get you?" the crackly voice in the speaker asked. "Hi," I said, rolling down my window. "I'd like a double cheeseburger, a large fry, and a chocolate shake. And, actually, add a second fry. Anything else?" "No," I said. "That's it." "That'll be $14.50 at the window." I pulled up to the window. I handed the cashier the same $20 bill I had almost wasted on a glass of tap water at the steakhouse. She handed me a warm, greasy paper bag and $5 in change. I parked in the empty lot, leaving the engine running. I unwrapped the burger. It was squished, the cheese was melted onto the wrapper, and it smelled like grease and salt. I took a bite. It was the best meal I had ever tasted. As I dipped a fry into my shake, I thought about the table I had left behind. I thought about the $3,270 bill. I thought about the Subaru I was going to buy next week, a car that would be in my name, bought with my money, for my life. My phone lit up one more time. It was a text from my best friend, Lena. "Lena, how's the fancy dinner? Did you survive the Core 4? I picked up the phone. I took a selfie with my half-eaten burger, the chocolate shake, and the genuine, exhausted smile plastered on my face. I hit send. Me. I didn't just survive. I resigned. I put the phone down and finished my meal in the quiet warmth of my car. I was alone, eating fast food in a parking lot on a Saturday night. But for the first time in 26 years, I realized I wasn't hungry anymore. I had finally stopped paying the admission fee to a family that never wanted me to see the show. I put the car in reverse and backed out of the spot. The road ahead was dark, but my headlights cut right through it. I knew exactly where I was going.